Hi, guys. Hey, 72 folks already. I see you've been talking amongst yourselves again, which I love to see. I love to see what topics y'all bring up. So, yeah, Marilyn, the bake nurse, just says, I think it's important to do the work even when you don't feel like it. That is absolutely 100% true. I'm just going to jump off, start talking about that first. As a matter of fact, I would say that is probably the times when it is the most important to actually do it. Whenever you don't feel like doing magic, those are the times whenever you force yourself to do them anyway, whenever you make yourself go through it, even when you think, I don't want to do this for the millionth time today. When you force yourself to exercise that level of discipline and that level of commitment, those are the times when you get more reward than, even when you're excited and can't wait to start and just are on fire to do it every day. It's those times that take the most discipline and also provide you with the most reward. It's doing that really strengthens your will. Really, it does. It's like making yourself go to the gym when you don't want to do it. But Jen also says that it happens to everyone. Everyone goes through those time periods whenever they, fall into that stage of just not feeling like doing it. You just don't want to get up and do the rituals again. And that's true. Everybody will experience that multiple times, especially if you've been doing this for years. You're gonna experience those times. I myself still experience those times. Um, the key is, if you push through anyway, the joy comes back. It may take it a week, it may take it 2 weeks, it may even take it a month, but the joy in doing the rituals will come back if you make yourself keep doing them. I'm going to give everybody, like I usually do, give everybody a few minutes to get here before we jump into the main topic. And while we're waiting, I thought I would go back for a second and cover another thing. I know a lot of you guys have gotten this book already, Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. And, I've talked about how pretty much, give me 1 second. I'm going to cover this up just so that I don't get distracted and forget what I'm talking about in the middle of a sentence. And I'll uncover that in a few minutes. And we will do questions and answers and just have conversation about whatever you guys want to talk about. Just know that I can't see it right now. I covered it up because I'll always, forget what I'm talking about in the middle of a sentence if I don't. But I know a lot of you have already gotten this book, Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. And I wanted to read you another section out of here and tell you how I apply it to my own practice, as well as how other traditions do this same thing, and why it's so important. And not only important, but also incredibly powerful. It is a very potent thing to do. So let me find it real quick. Here we go. So you remember the last time we were reading this, the last thing we were covering was basically the breathing exercises, how we would breathe in certain elements. For example, you breathe in air for a particular purpose and you see it fill your entire body up with yellow light. Or you can breathe in earth for a specific purpose. You breathe in and visualize that the chi is completely filling you from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head with green light. Or you can do fire, doing it with red, or you can do water, doing it with blue. And each one has different purposes. What you're doing is aligning yourself with the energy of the element. So that was the first step. The second step was doing what he calls, and what other people call, even in other traditions like Eastern traditions, they call pore breathing, P-O-R-E. Not to be confused with poor, P-O-O-R. You don't want to breathe poorly. Pore breathing means our skin breathes. We don't just take in oxygen. We don't just take in air through our nose and our mouths. We also take in air through our skin. I've brought up a couple of times how in ancient Rome, you would actually have people that would suffocate to death during certain rituals and celebrations because they would paint their entire bodies gold so that they look like gold statues, and it would clog the pores of their skin, so they end up suffocating to death. They would die. Even though they can still breathe through their nose and mouth, their skin couldn't breathe, and they would die because of this. So in the second step, you begin practicing doing the same thing, taking in an elemental energy, but doing it, not just breathing it in through your nose, not just breathing it in through your mouth, but every time you inhale, you try to feel and try to visualize that you're taking in the element through your entire body, through every pore, throughout the entire surface of your skin. You inhale and feel your entire body pulling it in. You exhale and feel and see your entire body releasing it, letting it out. And you can do, anything you want to do with this. For example, say you have a test coming up and you want to be more proficient at studying and memorizing and retaining the information that you're going to need to pass this test. You could do one of those exercises using the element of air, because air is about the intellect and all of that sort of stuff. So that's what it would correspond to. Well, now we're getting to something that personally I find to be a tremendous amount more powerful than just breathing in chi like that for a purpose. I mean, you see behind me right now, this is my altar. This is my shrine where I keep the things that I'm working on and working with. And one of the things you'll see back here is rice. Just a plain old bag of white rice. I prefer Thai jasmine just because to me it has more flavor than other kinds of rice. It tastes a little popcorny, a little bit like popcorn to me. That's the reason I use this kind, just because I prefer it. It could be any kind in the world. And it doesn't even have to be rice. You can do this with anything. We're going to talk about this in a second, but 90% of my diet is still just white rice. You remember I got really, really sick a few months ago to the point that I thought I was literally dying due to digestive issues, and I had to go on a rice diet. And I've been able to now, I'm not nearly as sick anymore. I've been slowly, gradually healing. But still, this is the majority of my diet right here, which is why I keep this on my altar so that it's absorbing energy while I'm doing my rituals. But I also do rituals specifically on the rice. We're going to get to that. One second. So he calls this is under a section he calls conscious intake of nourishment. What we have learned about breathing also applies to the intake of nourishment for our physical body. Here, too, the same elemental processes occur as in the inhalation of air, with the exception that the effect of the elements is more material and coarser. Food which is impregnated with a wish, that's what he calls it whenever you charge something. He says you're impregnating it with a particular energy or a wish. Food which is impregnated with a wish has a particularly strong effect on the material plane because it is subjected to the coarsest material elemental emanations. Meaning basically that whenever you're eating something, when you're taking food in, it's becoming part of your physical body. You are what you eat. So whenever you do magic on it, when you charge it with a particular energy and you take it in, you're making that energy part of your physical body too. A magician would be well advised to consider this aspect if he wishes to achieve success in regards to his own body or other material wishes. And like I said, I'm doing it for health to still, come back from this sickness. But you can do it for other things. Whenever you have a meal, place the food which you are about to eat directly in front of you, and with the most intense imagination of which you are capable, concentrate on the idea that your wish be embodied in the food, and that it is as effective in this manner as if it were already a reality. Should you be alone and undisturbed or unwatched by anyone, you can hold your hands over the food and bless it, and you can also close your eyes. Should this opportunity not present itself, then impregnate the food with your wish. And what he's talking about then when he says that is do it just through visualization. You know, if you can't put your hands over it or close your eyes and whisper to yourself or anything because it would draw too much attention, then you just do it through sheer visualization. This will give people the impression that you are praying, which is really what you are doing. Then eat the food slowly but consciously, with the inner conviction that your wish actually passes over into your entire body, into the finest nerves, with the food that you are eating. That which is for Christians the communion must be for you the intake of food. It is, so to speak, a sacred act. It is therefore not advantageous for your magical development to eat in haste, meaning don't gobble your food. All food and beverages are suitable for the magical impregnation of wishes, but there is a condition. Always eat and drink everything that you have impregnated. Nothing but nothing should be left over. Never read while you eat. And keep in mind, in his day, most people didn't have TVs. That's why he doesn't say don't watch TV while you eat, or don't look at the internet watching YouTube videos while you eat. You know, those things didn't exist back in his day. Most people still read books all the time. That was their primary form of entertainment. And they would read while they were eating. So he would say, you know, don't read while you're eating. Unfortunately, many people are afflicted with this bad habit, talking about reading while they're eating. Also, you should not speak or carry on a conversation during your meal. You eat merely for the purpose of maintaining your wish. In other words, you don't have pointless chit-chat conversations while you're eating because you want to keep your mind completely focused on what it is that you're trying to manifest. Like in my case, for example, health. So whenever I would cook this rice and I would start to eat it, I'm visualizing it filling my entire body with all of the light that I've put into it. And I can't very well do that if I'm having, you know, just mundane conversations with someone while I'm eating. Let me see. You eat merely for the purpose of maintaining your wish. Furthermore, pay attention that you do not add another wish, especially an opposite one. In other words, when you practice the conscious or magical breathing exercise and you wish for health, you cannot, for example, concentrate on success during the meal. It is advantageous to express the same wish when you practice your breathing exercises as well as when you have a meal, so that you do not produce opposite radiation vibrations in the body. An old proverb states, "Whoever attempts to catch two hares at the same time catches none." Those who are prepared during their conscious intake of food for the Eucharistic secret will find here the connection. The profound and real significance of Christ's words will be revealed to such an individual. Take and eat, for this is my body. Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood. So, there are a couple of ways to do this. Well, actually, there's a whole lot of ways to do it, which is another thing I'm going to get to in just a second. For me, I find, he says, Franz Barden, the way he describes it, he says if you're doing it for yourself, that it's better if you like take the energy into yourself, you know, like inhale it and pull the chi into your Tiphareth center. So your Tiphareth center glow bright gold, and then exhale and push it down your arms, out your hands, and into the food. He says it's better to do it like that if you're doing it for yourself. You know, take the energy into your body and then push it out into what you're doing if it's for yourself. He says if it's done for someone else, it's better to do it in a way where you don't take the energy into yourself first. Like, for example, what I always do is, you know, once again, I've told you guys about the analysis of the keyword, the ritual where you're doing the LVX, and then you say, let the divine light descend, and you see that light come down from the very top of the universe. And either saturate yourself or the room you're in or the glass of water you're getting ready to drink, whatever it is. Uh, that's what he's talking about whenever you're doing it for someone else. I do it for myself like that, doing it that way, because honestly, personally, I've found that for me, when I'm charging something, whether it's a talisman, whether it's rice, whether it's a glass of water, for me, for some reason, it is just far more effective if I do it that way. So you could do it, for example, every meal you eat, you should do this. Every single meal you eat. And I'm going to read you something else now, because this is, like Christians call it saying grace. When I was a kid, that's what they would say to us, like you're saying grace, where you're actually asking, they would say you're asking God to bless the food so that you're eating this blessing. In Thelema, Crowley's system, he developed a practice called saying will. That's a lot like saying grace. But let me read it to you. The ritual of saying will is intended to maintain the focus of those who practice it on the great work by reminding them that even so mundane an act as eating a meal is an essential part of that work. So basically what you're doing is reminding yourself that every single thing that you do, every act of magic, even every mundane thing, like eating a meal, drinking a glass of water, whatever it is, it should all be done consciously, deliberately, and with a purpose in mind. And even if you don't have a purpose, like, in my case, I'm doing it for health. When I'm charging rice and eating it, I'm doing it so that it heals my body. And I'll tell you, it does work. It's incredibly powerful. I had a really bad day yesterday and this morning. Like I said, I'm getting better, but I still have days when it's not very pleasant. I was feeling that this morning when I got up. I came in and did my rituals. I charged the rice. I brought the light down on it. When I ate it afterwards, I went and I cooked some of it, ate it. The pain and the ailments that I'd been experiencing yesterday and this morning were gone within like 10 minutes. So it does have profound effects. But even and you can do it, for example, you can do it for prosperity. You can do it for protection. You can do it for love. Whatever it is that you're wanting to bring into your life, you charge the food with the energy that corresponds to that intention. Like, for example, if you're wanting to bring more love into your life, you would charge it with the energy of Netzach. What color is Netzach? It can be green. It can be pink. You envision the light at the top of the universe as being either green or pink. Every time you're inhaling, you're seeing it grow brighter and brighter and brighter. Do it at least 10 times. Inhale at least 10 times and see it glow brighter. Hold it. Exhale, the air goes out, but the energy stays in. Inhale and see it glow brighter. Hold it. Exhale, the air goes out, but the energy stays in, like that. Do that at least 10 times. And after the 10th time, say, let the divine light descend, and see all of that energy that you've accumulated up there come blasting down through the universe and completely saturate and surround your food, what you're charging. And you would do it in this case for love, say with a green light or a pink light. If you're doing it for protection, you could do it with a red light or black, because black is the color of Binah on the tree of life. Red is the color of Geburah. So those are both protective energies. Different kinds of protective energies. One is more like combative and straight taking something on and overcoming it. The other is more like binding and banishing it so that it can't affect you anymore. But you can put anything into it. But if you're not putting any kind of intention into it, you do it for accomplishing the great work. What I always say when I'm doing that, I'll say, may this be a potent, powerful tool to aid and assist me in completing the great work within this lifetime. May it come about in a way that I enjoy and in a way that brings harm to none and is for the good of all, and in no way let this reverse or bring upon me or my loved ones any curse. I ask this in the divine name, and then I vibrate whatever name is associated with whatever spirit is on the tree that I'm trying to bring the energy down on. But like when you're doing it for the great work, Crowley came up with another way, and I'm going to read this to you and explain one thing about it. So there's several different versions of it, and it's done by multiple people. There'll be a leader, and there will be people who respond to the leader. So whenever it starts off, the way it always starts is whoever is leading this will step up to the table and knock 3 times, then knock 5 times, then knock 3 times. And then he'll say, "Do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." Everybody responds back to him and says, "What is thy will?" He then says, "It is my will to eat and to drink." Everybody then responds back saying, "To what end?" The leader says, "That I may fortify my body thereby." Everybody responds back, "To what end?" He says, "That I may accomplish the great work." Everybody responds back, "Love is the law, love under will." He then knocks 1 time and says, "Fall to," and everybody goes to eating. So the knocks, what those represent, you've got 3, and then 5, and then 3. The 3 at the beginning and the end are the hexagram. A hexagram is made of a triangle with two triangles that are overlapping or interlocking, and each triangle has 3 points. So the first triangle is the first 3 knocks. The second triangle is the last 3 knocks. The 5 knocks in the middle is the pentagram, because a pentagram has 5 points. So what you are doing, that is symbolically the pentagram inside the hexagram with all of the knocking. So you're basically invoking both planetary and elemental energy. Now, what you should do while you're even doing the knocking, there's a lot you can do to add to this. For example, before you even start to do the knocking, you step up to the table, you close your eyes, and you inhale and fill the earth with light beneath your feet. Exhale, the air goes out, the energy stays in. Inhale, fill the earth with light beneath your feet. You do that a few times until you've built up a bunch of energy in the earth. And then whenever you start knocking, every time you knock, you see that energy go out in waves, completely saturating the food on the table. You're releasing it. With every knock, you're releasing all of that energy that you built up. It's not just pointlessly knocking. It's not just pointlessly reciting words. There has to be visualization and energy, intention and chi put into this, or you're just saying stuff. Your mind is supposed to be focused, and you are deliberately putting energy into the food with the aim of completing the great work within this lifetime. So that's another way you can do it. The way Crowley described it, the way Franz Barton described it, even the way Christians do it. If you want to, you just bow your head and you say a prayer asking the source of creation, God, the divine mind, the source that everything came from and to which everything will one day return, whatever title you want to put on it. You visualize it and you see its blessing come down and fill the food up so that you can complete the great work within this lifetime. Now, that is an incredibly powerful thing that you can use in just normal everyday life. So what I wanted to talk about today, now that we've given everybody plenty of time to get here, is scriptures in the Bible pertaining to money and manifesting and having the things that you want. When one second. See, I made myself some notes this time too, so that It's like the Bible. It tells us it's not neutral when it comes to money, and it does not tell you that money is evil. Despite what people would make you believe whenever they misinterpret or misunderstand certain scriptures, there is nothing in the Bible that tells you money is evil. We'll get to that misconception in just a second. But as a matter of fact, what it does, there are a lot of scriptures, and I wrote a few of them down. I'm only going to get to a few of them because there are a lot of them that tells us basically how to properly use, treat, and look at money, finances. And this is actually really important. I know it sounds boring. It probably sounds like, what the hell does this have to do with magic? But it is very much entangled with magic, and it's really important. As a matter of fact, the Bible actually mentions money, wealth, and possessions over 2,000 times. So it's not something that it just mentions in passing. This is something that it goes into in very great depth and detail. Whenever he was doing a Sermon on the Mount, Jesus actually points out that at one point that money and God are rivaling masters. What he says is that if you love money, you're going to despise God. And if you love God, you're not really going to care that much about money. He says you cannot serve both God and money. And that's from Matthew 6:24. But I'm going to tell you what this actually means. This is what I mean about where the misinterpretation of this stuff comes in. Usually, well, I'll tell you honestly, when people ask me where I learned about the Bible, some of the greatest magicians that I have ever come across in my life were Christian ministers. And to be honest, for some crazy ass reason, I don't know why, the most profound Shaktipat speaking ministers or people of any denomination or tradition or anything else that I've come across in my life were usually from Texas. They were like preachers from Texas for some reason. And what I mean by Shaktipat, like speaking Shaktipat, if you're familiar with this concept, like in yoga, that's what Shaktipat is actually a yogic name for what this is. And we don't really have a name for it in magic, although we do it a lot. This is what they're talking about in the Bible whenever it says, it puts such emphasis on the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was God, and the word was with God, and it puts such a strong emphasis on speaking. It's because when you speak, you are transmitting energy with your mouth. I mean, that's all words are. Words are sound waves, and sound waves are energy. Well, people can actually, you find it, most people are familiar with it happening in yogic traditions. But what happens is when you come across someone that has developed enough energy about themselves, whenever they speak to you about certain things dealing with spirituality, you will feel it. I mean, it will, the only way I know how to describe it is you will know, whoa, whenever this guy just said that, something went off in my head. That made so much sense that I didn't just feel it in my brain. I felt that in my heart. I felt that down to the core of my bones. This guy is spitting truth right now. Whenever that happens, it also jumpstarts your spiritual progress. You'll realize, I'm feeling something when this guy is talking. That's Shaktipat. Well, it's not just in yogic traditions. People do it in magic. I have had people actually speak to me and heal me of afflictions before, heal me of things that were causing me damage just by speaking to me. I've had men say things to me that caused explosions of epiphanies and realizations inside my consciousness that I don't know if I would have ever understood these things or developed to that point by myself if I had not have had the help of these people. But those most of those were in magic, but I have come across them also, just men who did not consider themselves magicians. They considered themselves ministers, and these were men who had attained the knowledge and conversation of the HGA. They did not call it that. To them, that language would have been foreign, but they had. You if you know what that means, like because you are a student or an initiate of magic, you are capable of perceiving it in others. You would be able to perceive it in them. They would call it something like something to do with the Holy Spirit or something. They didn't call it, they would never say anything about attaining the knowledge and conversation of the HGA, but that's what they had done. And they would also talk about will. They would also talk about doing your will, only they called it a calling, that you have a calling. Like everyone has a different calling. And I'm going to get to that in just a second too, the calling thing. But you hear a lot of people talking crap about what they call prosperity ministers. That's become like a derogatory term, or a term people use to try to disparage people who, try to explain to others that the divine source does not want you to live in a state of poverty. They call them prosperity ministers, kind of like trying to besmirch them. But there was one of the guys that I learned a lot from was a 74-year-old preacher in Texas. And one time this guy asked him, and he was kind of sneering whenever he said it. This guy was one of those that people would call prosperity ministers. And this other guy comes up to him and he's kind of sneering and deriding. He says, what are you, one of those prosperity ministers? He says, well, I don't really believe in that. I don't agree with that. And the old man said, yeah, I am. As a matter of fact, what are you, a poverty minister? Because what he was teaching was coming straight from the Bible. So if this guy didn't believe that, then he didn't, it was like, it's not my issue to take up. I'm not going to argue with you over it. I'm not going to fight with you over it. If you don't like what God says, take it up with God. I'm just here to tell you what's in the book. That's it. But he also said, and this is what I mean about will. He said, it's not my calling to talk to just anyone and everyone. This guy was not someone who suffered fools lightly. He would call somebody a jackass in a heartbeat. He did not suffer fools. He would say, it is not my job, it is not my place, and it is not my calling to talk to anyone and everyone about this stuff. He said, I'm not here to save your soul or convert you or any of these kind of things. He said, leave that stuff up to people whose calling it is. And there are certain people who that's their calling. He said, for example, leave that up to Oral Roberts or Billy Graham or those types of guys. That's their thing. That's what they do. He said, my will, or he called it my calling. He said, my calling is to talk to people who are already well beyond that stage, people who already have the way he would say it is the Spirit of God in them and on them. But what he meant, what he was describing, is people who had already attained the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. He was saying it was his job, it was his calling to speak to people who were already that far along and encourage them and bring them even more, not to go out and try to, convert people who are going to sneer and make fun or any of that kind of stuff. Let me look at my notes for 1 second. Oh, here's another thing. People get it stuck in their heads that somehow or another poverty makes you more holy, or what's the other word? Holy or closer to God or something like that. It does not at all. Not in any way, shape, form, or fashion. They'll also think like as an extension of that, or on the other side of that coin, they'll think if being poor, if being in poverty makes you a better person, if it makes you more holy, then if you're successful in some way, if you're financially successful, if you're, enjoying your life enjoying the senses and all this sort of stuff, then that must make you a bad person. Well, the thing about that is, if you fall into that trap of believing that, you will never be successful and you will never be prosperous. I don't care if you spend an hour a day doing rituals to make your situation in life, your circumstances, your finances, any of that stuff grow and flourish, to manifest things. Even if you do that an hour a day, it is not going to override the fact that you're telling yourself 23 other hours of the day that if I am financially successful, then I'm a bad person. If you're repeating that kind of stuff, if that's how, and if you believe it, if you feel that, then that's what you're telling yourself, even if it's just subconsciously. So what happens is, if you're trying to, like, say, for example, you're trying to do a ritual to, say there's something you want, or you need money for something, or whatever the hell it is, and you start doing ritual work to manifest that. Anytime you do start to get ahead, like financially, something will happen that will knock you back down a step. You'll get an unexpected bill in, or you'll have some kind of unexpected emergency that you'll have to spend the money on that you were saving up. Whatever it is, something will happen to knock you back down. That's because subconsciously you're telling yourself, I can't be financially successful and be a good person. So your subconscious or unconscious mind is going to disrupt your ritual work so it can make sure that you're going to be able to stay a good person. And the only way it thinks it can do that is by keeping you broke. If you are doing ritual work for an hour a day and you do not get that out of your head the other 23 hours a day, it's going to override it every time. Let me see. What else did I write? Here it is. The people that usually whatever, for some reason, the ones that are against people who teach you that the Bible wants you to be prosperous, and it does, and we'll get to some of those scriptures in just a minute that explain that, they'll usually quote or misquote two scriptures. One is from Matthew chapter 19, verse 24, and it says, "Then Jesus said to his disciples, 'Truly I tell you, it is hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God.'" Now, first off, let me point out that as soon as he says this, the disciples ask him, "So what are you saying? It's impossible?" Jesus' response to them is, "Nothing is impossible with God." So right there, he's telling you, no, it is not impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He's telling you that it's unlikely, and I'll tell you why that is in just a second, what the other scriptures that ties into that makes it make more sense why he said that. But first, the thing about what it means by a camel entering the eye of a needle, there's a couple of different theories on this. One is that the word in Aramaic, which these particular scriptures were written in, the words camel and rope, there was only like one letter difference in those two words, and a lot of people say that it was like a misspelling, a miswriting, that it's not a camel through the eye of a needle, it's a rope through the eye of a needle. Meaning, how normally what you put through a needle is thread. This would be like trying to put a rope through the eye of a needle. But another version would say, if it is camel, what they're talking about is used to when you had these walls around cities, like in ancient Sumer, your first defense against any invaders was the wall that you built around your city. That's what kept you safe. And you find it in all these different stories in the Bible, like Jericho and them marching around the wall until the walls crumble, all that kind of stuff. But to get through these walls in certain places, there was a gate that they called the eye of the needle. To get the camel through one of these gates, you had to take all the baggage off of it. You know, camels are like pack horses. Like they were used as vehicles to carry things. So to get the camel through this little bitty gate, you had to take all the packs, all the bags, all the cases, everything off of the camel, strip it down to nothing, and then the camel would actually have to get on its knees to get through the eye of a needle. So, you know, you're either talking about, if it is a miswriting, you're talking about getting a rope through the eye of a needle, or if it is an actual camel, you're talking about, you know, it can't take anything through the eye of the needle with it whenever it goes. It has to do it in this posture like of humbleness. It's on its knees. It's not carrying anything. Like they say, you're never going to see a hearse with a U-Haul hooked up behind it. But whichever one of those two things it is, let me get to some other scriptures. The other scripture that they'll usually misuse or misinterpret or mangle is, where was it at? Oh, they say that the Bible says, and they get this from 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. They'll say that money is the root of all evil. That is not what that verse says. I'm going to read you what it says and explain the difference. It says, what it actually says is, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. So it doesn't say money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil, or not even all. It says some or a great many, but it's people's love of and pursuit of money, which is where the evil comes from, not money itself. There is nothing evil about money whatsoever. Money is neither good nor bad. It just is. It's energy. It's the way we view it, the way we perceive it, and what we do with it that makes it either good or bad. But I'm going to read you some other of these scriptures. And remember last time, whenever we did the last live stream, how I was talking about the Bible is full of promises, where God makes you promises and God does not lie, that if you're doing magic, if you are faithful to these practices, you will receive these promises. And we were talking about like overcoming enemies and not being hurt by, you know, scorpions and snakes, which symbolize basically malicious, malignant, plotting, scheming, conniving people who would do you harm. That's what scorpions and snakes represent, and how they will not be able to hurt you as long as you do what it says do, which is do not fight them. Well, there are also promises in connection to prosperity, to money. And I'm going to read you what some of those are, because once again, these are things you want to read to yourself and get down in your soul. You want to refresh your mind with these, renew your faith with these, because they will power your magic when you know that you have like the will of the source of creation behind you backing this up. Reading these things will enforce that. First off is from 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 7. It says, the Lord makes poor and rich. He brings low. He also exalts. So the Lord makes poor and rich. The source of creation will intervene and sometimes affect people so that they are struck low, and sometimes affect people depending on what they're doing, depending on their practices, and raise them up. If money were evil, then it would not make you rich. This is a prayer. This is from Proverbs 38. It says, keep deception and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is my portion, meaning give me what I need. Don't give me too little and don't give me too much. Give me exactly what I need. That's the prayer that they're saying in Proverbs. And we're going to get back to this in just a second. Another one, Proverbs 23:4 says, "Do not weary yourself to gain wealth. Cease from your consideration of it." Meaning, don't think about it. Don't worry about it. Don't plan, plot, scheme on how you're going to get money. Matter of fact, don't think of it at all. Cease from your consideration of it. And we're going to get to why this is true. I'm going to explain these in just a second. Another one says, this is from Proverbs also, "A faithful man will abound with blessings, but he who makes haste to be rich will not go unpunished." That means anybody who comes up with some kind of quick, get rich quick scheme, they're usually going to come to a bad end. Nothing good's going to come of that. Money does not come quickly, easily. It usually means you're going to try to screw somebody out of something. Is what that one is. But a faithful man abounds with blessings. We're going to get to that in 1 second. There's another one, another proverb says, "There is one who scatters and yet increases all the more. And there is one who withholds what is justly due, and yet it results only in want." Meaning that when you hang on to things, when you hang on to money, when you do magic for money, like what I always do, if I'm in a state of need, if I'm needing something, what I say is let it flow to me and through me. Meaning I'm not going to try to hang on to it. Let it flow to me and through me. Let it go out to do what it's supposed to do. Let it meet my needs, but also let there be enough left over so that it can help other people meet their needs. In Malachi, it says, and I've got one more after this one, and then I'm going to tell you the point of these while I'm reading all these. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 10, it says, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. And test me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until it overflows." So the source of creation is telling you, test me, see if this is true or not. And like I said, it doesn't lie. It keeps its word. These are promises that it makes to you. If you test it, it will do what it tells you it will do. And there was one more. Where was it? In 1 second, guys. There was one more. Here it is. Oh, two more. Proverbs 10:22 says, "It is the blessing of the Lord that makes rich, and he adds no sorrow to it." Meaning it will make you rich, and it will not make you regret being that way. And the other one is, "The one who is taught the word is to share all good things with the one who teaches him." And that's from Galatians 6:6. Make sure that's all that I needed to read off real quick. Skimming through them. Give me 1 second. So basically, what it comes down to, it's telling you, don't focus on money. Cease to be concerned about it. But it doesn't, it also tells you it'll make you rich. It tells you, test me. See if I won't open the windows of heaven and rain blessings down on you, rain prosperity down on you. Some of the richest people in the world are figures in the Bible. Abram, for example, it talks about how he had silver and gold and flocks of livestock and all of these sort of things. None of those ancient prophets in the Bible, none of those guys was living in poverty. With the exception at one point, Job. Job gets struck down low, gets sick, loses everything he has, but then it says he comes back and is given even twice more what he had to begin with. None of those people. There's a book called Millionaires of the Bible, for example, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a second. But essentially what it's telling you, and this is what Jesus says, this is what Christ himself says. He says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you." He says, don't think about what, fine food and rich drink and fancy clothes you're going to wear. He said, these are what unbelievers consider. These are what unbelievers dwell on. These are what unbelievers seek after. You concern yourself with seeking after the kingdom of God, which is what they call completion of the great work in the Bible. If you seek that, if you make that your number one priority, all of these other things will be added to you. Your needs will be taken care of. Now, that doesn't mean, for example, that you're going to get anything and everything that you might want, but it means you will get anything and everything that you need. The difference in what you might want is what is for one person a blessing would be for another person a curse. Just because something is a blessing to you does not mean it would be a blessing to me. Say, for example, you live in I don't know, let me think, New Mexico or Texas or Arizona or somewhere, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, then to you, a car would be a blessing. It would allow you to get where you need to go when you need to get there in order to take care of yourself and your family and everything else. To me, on the other hand, I can't drive. I have never had a driver's license in my life. I hate cars. I get car sick 5 minutes into a ride through the city. If you were to give me a Porsche today, there's not a damn thing that I could do with it. So that would not be a blessing to me. As a matter of fact, I would end up just having to pay $400 a month for a parking spot somewhere here in the city to park it. So that doesn't mean you're going to be, rolling in whatever it is, whether it's gold and bling or cars and whatever it is. It means you are going to be given what you need in order to accomplish your will, and you'll be given it when you need it. You don't need anything and everything to accomplish your will, but if you use what you're given, you'll be given more. This is the story in the talents. Remember the master who gives his servants, he gives each one of them a different number of talents, and then he goes and leaves, and he comes back later and he calls his servants to him and he says, what did you do with this money? And one of them says, I invested it in this and I earned you this much back. And another one says, well, I did this with it and I earned you this much back. And another one says, I went and buried it and didn't do anything with it, and now here's exactly what I gave you back, because I knew you were like a fierce master and you would punish me if I lost it. And he says to him, you know this, you know that I'm fierce, you know that I can be wrathful, yet you don't do anything to increase what I gave you. You're supposed to take what you're given and use it to make more. Remember how we were talking last time in the last live stream too, about how a lot of times, like, you won't be taught anything that you won't end up using later in some way. And in my own case, I talked about speaking publicly, how I got asked to do this show one time whenever I first got out of prison, where I learned how to do public speaking. It was something that never crossed my mind, didn't know I was going to have anything to do with or anything else. I did it, and it ended up being something that I used to go on a worldwide speaking tour. I used it in interviews that I do. I use it when, the things I learned then, I use it now when I'm talking to you guys. I never would have knew how to speak publicly if I wouldn't have done that. I took what was given to me and began to use it and was given more because of it. So the thing is, there is, long story short, cutting it to basically the core of why we're talking about this, is there is absolutely nothing in the Bible whatsoever against you being a prosperous person. As a matter of fact, it's exactly the opposite. What it tells you is don't make the things of this world your priority. Don't chase money. Don't chase stuff. Chase the great work. Chase the kingdom of heaven. Chase the God that is within you. When you make that your priority, then you will receive the rest in its due course. One of the ways that you'll be able to tell if someone is really doing magic versus if they're just talking about it is every aspect of their life will gradually start to improve. It won't happen all at once, might not happen in leaps and bounds and in huge major ways, but you will see changes in that person. And the changes in that person will lead to you seeing changes in the circumstances of their life. You cannot change as a person and not have your outer life change. The reason that our life is manifesting the way it is right now is because, to use new age terminology, our energy vibrates at a particular frequency, which is compatible with the world around us. That's why we're in it. If you begin to raise that vibrational frequency, then a lot of times you will find yourself get spit out or forced out of where you currently are and into a better place. You'll find yourself surrounded by better people, people that are going to inspire you, people that are going to motivate you, people that are going to be true friends to you, people that you're going to learn from. You'll find yourself living in better quality neighborhoods. Just in all different ways, you will see that when a person really dedicates themselves to doing this, their life is going to improve. And that's what it's telling you. That's what it's teaching you. It's saying there's nothing wrong with money, but don't make money what you strive for. Don't make things what you strive for. You're never going to be happy with that. You're going to have an empty ass life. It also says that you can't serve two masters. If you make this world your priority, if you focus on gaining things and stuff and, just getting into, an example, I watched the show, if you guys have heard of it, the show called Atlanta. I think Danny Glover is both, hilarious and I think he's a genius. And I was watching the show and I watched this episode about the women in the show at one point are trying to get to this party at Drake's house, and all they care about is getting a selfie with Drake so that they can post it on their Instagram page to get more followers. That it's like everything they have is just on that. I forgot why I started talking about this. Oh, basically the theme, the end of the show, one of them realizes, she's looking at this and she realizes how empty and pointless all of this is. That it was like a revelation for her, an awakening of some kind. She realized that you will never find contentment and fulfillment in chasing those things of this world that are going to give you, that you think are going to give you clout or recognition or, the love of this world. You will never be fulfilled by those things. If you chase them, you are going to be let down over and over and over, and you will have no connection to the divine. If you make that connection to the divine and completing the great work, if those two things are what you put all of your heart and soul into, then you'll be given everything else that is required for you to experience happiness and contentment in this life as a side effect of that. And that's it. So I'm going to uncover this and see what you guys are talking about. Yeah, Andrew says it's all a rat race. That is exactly what it is. It's the weirdest thing. It's almost like the world or the people who run the world dangle things in front of you to distract you. They tell you this is what you're supposed to be seeking. If you go after this, you're going to be content and fulfilled. And they always, there's always going to be a next thing, a new thing. If you get the thing, whatever it is that they're hanging in front of you, dangling in front of you, if you do ever become one of those people lucky enough to get whatever it is, then you're not going to be happy. You're still going to have this hole in you. And the only people I know that have any kind of peace, contentment, joy, and real lasting happiness in their lives are people who uh, have a spiritual connection. Rachel says, invoking used for just manifestation? No, absolutely not. Invoking, you can also use it for what we call spiritual sustenance. You do the invoking pentagrams, you do the invoking hexagrams, and you put that energy in. You basically absorb it. Either you put it in water, you put it in food, you put it in rice, whatever it is, and you say, "May I complete the great work within this lifetime." Whenever you do that, what you're using the invoking for is spiritual sustenance. So that is the most important thing. Honestly, here's another thing. Someone once told me, and this makes a lot of sense. Someone told me one time that they never do magic for manifesting, that they only do it for spiritual sustenance. Because if you're doing it to manifest something, essentially all you're doing is shoveling karma from one place to the next. It's like if you don't have this, then it's because you're not vibrating at the frequency to obtain that. So there's that sense of lack. And if you shovel from one place to another, you're just going to have lack in a different part of your life. So no, manifesting, you use invoking of the hexagram, you use invokings of the pentagrams, you use the rose cross, all of those things, you use the middle pillar, all of that stuff for spiritual sustenance. Let's see. Drawbligated one says, so a good repetition or repertoire is Quabalistic Cross, invoking LBRP, middle pillar, and cross again. Yes, that is absolutely like what you want to start with and maintain. That should be the bottom line basic practice that you do. Every day. That's what you never do any less than that. Is I guess what I'm saying. So Hillary Hack says, I don't do things to manifest, just to perfect myself, and the rest just naturally takes care of itself. You will find that, the more you do magic just to complete the great work, to work on yourself, the more you'll find everything else just falling into place. However, I'm not telling you don't do magic to manifest things. Absolutely not. By all means, that's one of the things that also can build faith. I do magic to manifest things all the time. Oh, speaking of, I'm glad I remembered this just now. And then I'll stop talking after this. Jen, one other thing. Jen says, my understanding is that with manifesting, you also have to banish the opposite. You don't have to, but it will make what you're doing much more likely to work, to manifest. And what she means by that is you can do rituals one day to invoke and manifest, say, prosperity. And the next day you can do rituals like invoke Saturn to banish and bind poverty or lack. So you're doing magic one day to make it grow, to manifest something. You're doing magic the next day to get rid of its opposite. If you hit both ends of the spectrum, if you do both, you can do one or the other. But if you do both, then you're going to experience it in a much more powerful way. And it usually, whenever it does start to manifest in your life, it manifests in a much more balanced way. Henry says, does karma affect your progress in the great work? Absolutely. Yeah. It's not the be all and the end all. You can have horrible karma and still complete the great work. You can still overcome that. But yeah, it does have an effect, just like everything else has an effect. You're like, if you're sick physically, that can have an effect. If you are unstable emotionally, that can have an effect. Everything has an effect, but all of these things can be overcome and rectified to a certain extent. Oh, here's one other thing I wanted to tell you guys. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it yet. There is something really big going on in my life right now that I am really excited to share about with you guys, and it pertains to the magic school. It is now that I have a clear vision in my mind and a path to go down. I've been doing magic. One of the things we talked about last time was doing rituals aimed at letting me, like you say, let me see, let me know my path ahead and show it to me in a way that is so loud and so clear that I can't miss it. And that's what I've been doing lately. And what I'm seeing is where and how I want to do the magic school. I want to have a brick and mortar school in the real world where people who want to learn and practice magic can come to learn and practice magic. That is going to be put into motion. I am going to start making the very first steps in that process in the middle of April. I talked a while back about I was going to look at 80 acres of land in Mississippi, and it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And I thought if you had that much land, you could do all sorts of stuff. You could, put in bike trails and walking trails and build cabins for people to come and do retreats in, all of that sort of stuff. Well, I don't love Mississippi. Mississippi isn't a place that means, nothing against it. It's just, it doesn't mean anything to me. I've lived there before. I've lived there twice, but I don't have any kind of connection to it. It doesn't fill me with joy or vitality or life when I think of Mississippi or being out in the middle of nowhere. I don't want to say where it is yet because I want to get stuff put into motion first before I tell you guys about it. But I think you're going to be really excited. And I know that I am very excited. I am thinking about it almost nonstop now. Let me see. Vegas Vamp, you're getting warm. Let me see. Okay, guys, I am going to stop right now. No, not Prague, Andrew. Andrew Ray says Prague. Prague would be, a couple of people. Christine Sand says New Orleans. That's what I'm trying to do. I've lived there before when I was younger, and it's the only city in the U.S. that I really feel any kind of deep love or connection to outside of New York. And I don't feel it in New York anymore. It's kind of dead. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm going to stop for now, but I'm going to ask you to help me do magic on this probably several times in the future. And this isn't going to be fast. It's not going to be easy. But that's what I'm working on right now. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop, wrap this up, and I will talk to you in a couple of days or so. All right. Y'all have a good night, and I'll talk to you later.